You guys are really diving deep with this stack on life, destiny, and reincarnation. Looks like we're going to be exploring spiritualism today.
Yeah.
Specifically, we're going to be unpacking Life and Destiny by Léon Denis. Now, he was a leading figure in the French spiritualist movement. And his book lays out a pretty fascinating case for the soul's journey, surviving death, experiencing reincarnation, and ultimately progressing through multiple lives.
Lots to unpack there.
So get ready, because we're about to untangle the key arguments of spiritualism, explore the evidence Denis offers, and most importantly, consider what this all means for you.
Well, and what's really fascinating about Denis is that he doesn't just present spiritualism as a set of beliefs. He attempts to kind of weave together insights from science, philosophy, and religion to paint this broader picture of reality. He argues that our understanding of life and the universe is constantly evolving, with each of these disciplines kind of contributing to the tapestry of knowledge.
I like the tapestry of knowledge. So let's unpack this a bit further. He talks about a great tradition of spiritual knowledge that has been revived and reinterpreted throughout history, right? It's like he's saying spiritualism isn't a brand new idea. It's a thread woven through human thought for centuries.
Exactly. Yeah, and he's very quick to point out what he sees as the limitations of both traditional religion and mainstream science.
Mm-hmm.
He felt that religion was often too rigid and dogmatic, while science was maybe overly focused on the material world, neglecting the realm of the spiritual illustrate.
He actually calls for a new religion to emerge, one based on scientific spiritual research. He even points to statements from prominent figures like Sir Oliver Lodge and Maxwell, who seem to anticipate a similar shift toward a more spiritually informed worldview.
Right.
Like he envisioned a future where science and spirituality wouldn't be at odds, but would complement each other.
Yeah, that's a key point.
Right.
Denis believed that true understanding comes from a synthesis of knowledge. It's about embracing both the seen and the unseen, the material and the spiritual.
Now, this is where I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Have you ever felt those limitations in your own search for answers? Maybe you felt like traditional systems don't quite capture the whole picture.
It's a question worth pondering. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself fitting into these evolving ideas about life, the universe, and everything?
All right, so Denis lays out some core tenets of spiritualism that I think we should delve into. He argues that the soul is immortal. It reincarnates, it progresses through multiple lives, and its ultimate goal is to achieve union with the divine.
Right.
Big stuff.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Denis connects this to the concept of karma, the idea that our current life is shaped by our past actions. He describes it as a chain of cause and effect extending across lifetimes.
Okay, so this idea of karmic consequences across lifetimes, that's a big one. How does that make you feel? Does it shift your perspective on the choices you're making in your current life?
It certainly adds another dimension to personal responsibility, doesn't it?
It does. If our actions have consequences that ripple across multiple lifetimes, it really raises the stakes. Denis even suggests that suffering has a purpose, to purify the soul. So even our struggles can have a deeper meaning within this framework.
He doesn't, however, negate the importance of free will.
Yeah.
We're not simply puppets of fate. Within this system of cause and effect, we have the ability to choose to act, to learn, and to evolve.
So it's not just about being resigned to our fate. It's about understanding how our choices shape our journey across lifetimes.
Precisely. It encourages us to consider the long-term impact of our choices, not just the immediate gratification.
Now let's dive into some of the evidence that Denis presents for the soul's existence. He divides his arguments into two categories: moral proofs and experimental proofs.
Okay. All right, so on the moral side, he argues that matter alone cannot generate consciousness. He sees the brain as an instrument, not the source of who we are. So think of it like a piano. The brain is the keyboard, but the soul is the musician playing the instrument.
Okay, I like that analogy. It makes it a little bit easier to grasp.
Yeah. Denis also highlights the power of the will to override instinct, demonstrating the soul's ability to act independently of purely biological impulses. He even brings up the case of Gambetta, whose relatively small brain size didn't seem to hinder his remarkable intellect. It's a challenge to the assumption that brain size directly equates to intelligence.
So he's saying there's more to intelligence than just the physical structure of the brain.
Right. And then there's the evidence from near-death experiences, where people report vivid conscious experiences while their bodies are clinically dead. These accounts suggest a separation of consciousness from the physical body, a glimpse into the soul's independent existence.
That's pretty mind-blowing stuff. Makes you wonder what really happens when we die.
It does. And it leads us to Denis's experimental evidence, which ventures into some truly intriguing territory. He cites a range of phenomena that point to the soul's ability to operate beyond the limitations of the physical body. He talks about things like somnambulism, telepathy,
And
premonitions.
somnambulism, isn't that sleepwalking?
Yes. But Dennis is referring to cases where people perform complex actions while asleep, things they would normally be capable of doing in their waking state. He sees this as evidence of the soul's ability to act independently of the physical body.
Okay, I'm starting to see where he's going with this. So what about telepathy and premonitions? I've always been fascinated by those concepts.
Yeah, Dennis presents these phenomena as evidence of a universal communion between souls, an interconnectedness that transcends physical boundaries. He even delves into the concept of the double, what we might call the astral body, and its ability to exteriorize, or separate from the physical body.
And get this, he even talks about apparitions of both the living and the dead. He mentions a case investigated by the Society for Psychical Research involving Sir Karen Rash, a British politician who seemingly appeared at a parliament vote while physically ill at home. That one really caught my attention.
It is a fascinating case, and it raises questions about the nature of reality and the limitations of our current understanding of consciousness.
I'm curious, how does all of this evidence land with you? Is there anything that particularly stands out or resonates with your own experiences?
It's an invitation to reflect on our own encounters with the unexplained. Have we ever had experiences that defy conventional explanations?
Denis also explores the concept of the soul's memory. He describes it as a vibratory state that holds imprints of all past experiences. Think of it like the iceberg analogy. You know your conscious mind is the tip you see above the water, but your subliminal faculty, as described by Frederick Myers, is the vast hidden part below the surface?
That's a great way to visualize it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dennis argues that no memory is truly lost. It's just a matter of accessing those deeper levels of consciousness where those past life memories are stored.
And he even talks about some intriguing techniques for accessing these memories, including hypnosis and trance states. Imagine the possibilities if we could tap into the vast storehouse of knowledge and wisdom from our past lives.
Right. It begs the question, how might that knowledge impact our present lives and our understanding of who we are?
That's a great point. I'm starting to see how all of these concepts are interconnected. They paint a very different picture of reality than what we're often taught.
They do. And they challenge us to expand our understanding of what's possible and to consider the deeper dimensions of our own being.
Now, one of the most fascinating applications of reincarnation that Denis explores is its role in explaining extraordinary talents and abilities. He argues that cases of infant prodigies can't be solely explained by heredity or environment.
Right. He highlights the case of Jacques Cretin, a 16th century Scottish polymath known as the Admirable Cretin. This guy was a master of languages, philosophy, mathematics, theology, and even fencing. His level of genius just defies conventional explanation.
It's like he came into this life already equipped with a vast reservoir of knowledge and skill.
Yeah, it really does.
I'm starting to think I wasted a few past lives somewhere.
Well, Dennis suggests that we all come into this life with a unique spiritual resume shaped by our past experiences.
So it's not just about genius-level talents, even those challenging traits we sometimes see in ourselves or others. Maybe those are echoes of past life experiences as well.
It's a fascinating way of understanding the complexities of human nature. It challenges us to see beyond the surface and to consider the deeper layers that make us who we are.
Denis ultimately paints a picture of the soul's journey towards spiritual perfection. He envisions a process of growth, learning, and refinement that extends across lifetimes.
He beautifully describes the soul's ultimate goal as reaching a state of union with the divine, free from the cycle of rebirth. He uses the metaphor of a march from summit to summit to describe this journey.
What a powerful image. So are you telling me that according to Léon Denis and the spiritualist tradition, we're all souls on a journey shaped by past lives, with the potential for infinite growth and connection to a higher power?
That's the essence of it. Dennis emphasizes individual effort in this process, but he also hints at a divine plan guiding our evolution.
This raises an important question. How do those two forces, free will and destiny, work together?
That's perhaps the greatest mystery of all. Something to ponder as you continue your own journey, wouldn't you say?
It certainly is. There's a lot to unpack here.
Dennis really kind of digs deep into how our thinking about all these big questions kind of evolves over time. It's like he's tracing this history of human thought, showing how we're constantly kind of expanding our understanding of life and the universe.
And he doesn't limit that to just scientific discoveries, right? He sees philosophy and religion as playing a crucial role too.
Exactly. He emphasizes this great tradition of spiritual knowledge, which is a fascinating concept. Is like this river of wisdom flowing through history, constantly being replenished and reshaped by new insights and discoveries.
It's not static knowledge, it's evolving with us. And of course, Denis sees spiritualism as a key part of this evolving understanding.
He does. And he wasn't shy about kind of critiquing the limitations of traditional religion and this purely materialist approach to science. He argued that traditional religion often got bogged down in dogma, hindering spiritual growth, while mainstream science struggled to account for the mysteries of consciousness.
He even goes as far as to call for a new religion, one based on scientific spiritual research. It's like he wanted a system that combines reason and evidence with a deeper awareness of the unseen world.
He did. He saw this new religion as a synthesis of the best of science philosophy and spiritual insight, and he pointed to statements from influential figures of his time like Sir Oliver Lodge and Maxwell, who predicted a similar shift towards a more spiritually informed worldview.
It's making me wonder, do we see evidence of this new religion emerging today? Are we moving towards a more holistic understanding of life that integrates the spiritual and the material?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Good.
Denis certainly believed we were headed in that direction.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Maybe we can circle back to it later, but for now, I want to get into some of the specific evidence Denis presents for the soul's existence. I know we touched on it briefly before, but let's dive a little deeper. He talks about moral proofs and experimental proofs. Can you elaborate on those a bit more?
Of course. The moral proofs are more philosophical in nature. They rely on reasoning and logic to make a case for the soul. For example, Denis argues that matter alone cannot generate consciousness. He sees the brain as an instrument of the mind, not the source of it. Remember that piano analogy we talked about earlier? It illustrates that point beautifully.
Yeah, that analogy really stuck with me. So the brain is the piano, the soul is the pianist. What other moral proofs does he offer?
Well, he points to the power of the human will to override instinct. We can choose to act against our basic biological impulses, which suggests a higher level of consciousness, a soul capable of independent action.
That makes sense. And he brought up the case of Gambetta, the French statesman with the small brain who was still incredibly intelligent.
Exactly. That case challenges the materialistic view that intelligence is solely a product of brain size and complexity.
Those are some of the moral arguments. What about the experimental proofs? That's where things get a bit more out there, right?
They do. Denis delves into a range of phenomena that suggests the soul's ability to operate beyond the limitations of the physical body. He cites things like somnambulism, telepathy, premonitions, and even the exteriorization of the double.
Okay, let's break those down a bit. We talked about somnambulism earlier, but I'm still a little fuzzy on how that relates to the soul.
Denis is particularly interested in cases where people perform complex actions while sleepwalking, things they wouldn't be able to do in their waking state. He sees this as evidence of the soul acting independently of the conscious mind and physical body.
I've definitely heard stories of people doing some pretty wild things while sleepwalking, so that's somnambulism. What about telepathy and premonitions? Those always seemed a bit more like science fiction to me.
Denis doesn't see them that way. He presents them as evidence of a universal communion between souls, a connection that transcends time and space. He suggests that our minds are not isolated entities, but part of a larger web of consciousness.
That's a pretty radical concept. I'm not sure what to make of it. Does he offer any specific examples?
He does. He mentions cases of people having premonitions of events that later come true, sometimes with incredible detail. And he cites examples of telepathic communication, where information is transmitted between individuals without any known physical means.
Okay, those are intriguing. And then there's the exteriorization of the double. That one sounds a bit spooky.
Denis is referring to the concept of the astral body, a subtle body that can detach from the physical body. He presents cases where people have reported experiencing this detachment, sometimes even traveling to distant locations.
Now, this is where I start to get a bit skeptical. It's one thing to talk about premonitions or telepathy, but astral travel, that's hard to wrap my head around.
Denis acknowledges the challenges in accepting these ideas, but he encourages us to approach them with an open mind, to consider the evidence, and to draw our own conclusions.
I appreciate that. He doesn't want us to just blindly accept what he's saying. He wants us to think critically and form our own opinions.
Exactly. He wants us to be active participants in this exploration, not passive recipients of information.
So he's presented evidence from philosophy, from documented cases, from personal accounts. But how does he address those who remain unconvinced? Does he acknowledge the skeptics?
He does. He was well aware of the skepticism surrounding spiritualism. He understood that these ideas challenge conventional views of reality, but he also believed that the evidence, when carefully considered, was compelling.
Does he address the fact that some messages from the spirit world, especially regarding reincarnation, are contradictory? I've heard stories of spirits affirming reincarnation and others denying it.
That's a great question. Denis recognized that inconsistency and addressed it head-on. He argued that not all spirits are equally evolved or knowledgeable. Think of it this way. Imagine a student who's just starting elementary school being asked to explain advanced calculus. They simply wouldn't have the knowledge or understanding to do so.
So he's saying that some spirits, especially those newly arrived in the spirit world, might still be clinging to their earthly beliefs and haven't yet grasped the full scope of the soul's journey.
Exactly. It's like they're still learning and evolving just as we are here on Earth.
That makes a lot of sense. So how do we know which spirit communications to trust?
Denis stresses the importance of discernment. He reminds us that not everything that comes through is necessarily accurate or reliable. We need to use our critical thinking skills even when exploring these seemingly mystical realms.
So even in the spirit world, there's misinformation and disinformation.
It seems so. Denis encourages us to approach these topics with both curiosity and healthy skepticism.
That's a good reminder for us as well. It's easy to get swept up in these fascinating ideas, but it's important to maintain a critical perspective.
Absolutely. And Denis reminds us that the journey of spiritual evolution is not just about gathering information. It's about applying that knowledge to our lives. It's about transforming ourselves and the world around us.
Okay, so it's not enough to just read about these concepts or listen to podcasts about them. We need to put them into practice.
Precisely. Denis talks about cultivating virtues like love, compassion, and selflessness as essential for spiritual growth and for creating a more harmonious world. He encourages us to not just be observers of these truths, but to become living embodiments of them.
That's a powerful message. It's a call to action. It's not just about understanding these ideas intellectually. It's about integrating them into our daily lives.
He even suggests specific practices to help us on this journey, like meditation, contemplation, and service to others. He saw these practices as ways to connect with our inner selves, cultivate positive qualities, and contribute to the well-being of others.
He seems to believe that spiritual growth is not a solitary pursuit. It's something we do together as a community.
Absolutely. He saw the importance of connecting with like-minded individuals, forming communities dedicated to spiritual exploration and growth. He believed in the power of collective intention and the importance of supporting each other on the path of spiritual evolution.
It's like we're all in this together, helping each other to evolve and awaken.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And it brings us back to that question we posed earlier. Do we see evidence of Denis's new religion emerging today? Are we moving towards a more holistic understanding of life?
Well, I see a lot of people searching for meaning and purpose beyond the material world. There's a growing interest in practices like meditation and mindfulness. And there's a sense that we need to find ways to connect with each other and with something larger than ourselves.
I agree. And there's a growing recognition of the interconnectedness of all things, a shift away from the purely individualistic worldview that has dominated for so long.
Maybe Denis was onto something. Maybe we're on the cusp of a new era of spiritual awakening.
Perhaps. And Denis's work offers a compelling roadmap for navigating this new landscape, a guide for those seeking to live more meaningful and purposeful lives.
I'm curious to hear more about his thoughts on reincarnation. I know we've touched on it a bit, but I want to explore it in more depth. He seems to believe that it's not just a random cycle of rebirth, but a purposeful journey of soul evolution.
You're right. He saw reincarnation as a series of opportunities for growth, learning, and refinement, as we move toward a state of greater wisdom, compassion, and connection to the divine.
He even suggests that we choose our future lives based on the lessons we need to learn and the experiences that will best serve our spiritual evolution.
It's a fascinating idea. It suggests that we're not just passive recipients of fate, but active participants in shaping our own destiny.
That raises the question, if we choose our future lives, what does that mean for our understanding of free will?
That's a question worth pondering. It seems like Denis is suggesting a more complex interplay between choice and destiny than we often imagine. Perhaps our choices in this life shape the possibilities for our future lives, but we still retain a degree of agency within those parameters.
It's a mind-boggling concept. It really challenges our conventional notions of time and linear progression.
It does. Denis is asking us to consider the possibility that our lives are not isolated events, but interconnected chapters in a much larger story, a story that unfolds across multiple lifetimes.
So how does Dennis explain those who seem to be born with advantages, while others face incredible hardship from the very beginning?
He argues that these disparities reflect the different stages of soul development. It's like we're all on a journey, but we're not all starting from the same point. Some souls have been traveling longer than others, some have already learned certain lessons, while others are still working through them.
He even uses reincarnation to explain the phenomenon of infant prodigies, those children who exhibit extraordinary talents at a very young age.
He believes that their remarkable abilities reflect a continuation of learning and mastery from past lives. It's like they come into this life already equipped with a vast reservoir of knowledge and skill.
It's like those kids are picking up where they left off in a previous life. So if geniuses are benefiting from past life experiences, does that mean challenging traits are also carryovers?
Dennis believes so. He argued that even negative traits like cruelty or a tendency towards theft could be traced back to past life influences. He saw these traits not as permanent fixtures, but as opportunities for growth and transformation.
So it's not about blaming past lives for our shortcomings,
Right.
but understanding how those experiences might be shaping our current challenges.
Precisely. It's about recognizing the complexities of human nature and approaching ourselves and others with compassion and understanding.
It's like we all come into this life with a spiritual resume, a record of our past experiences, both positive and negative.
That's a great analogy, and it leads us to one of the most profound implications of reincarnation, the interconnectedness of all souls.
Dennis called it universal communion, right? Can you elaborate on that a bit more?
He believed that this interconnectedness isn't just a theoretical concept. It's a lived reality that we can experience through phenomena like telepathy premonitions and even apparitions.
So he's saying that we're all part of a vast web of consciousness, constantly influencing and being influenced by each other, both in this life and beyond.
Exactly. He even believed that this interconnectedness extends beyond the physical realm, that we can connect with those who have passed on and they can continue to influence and guide us from the spirit world.
That's a beautiful and hopeful thought. It suggests that our loved ones are never truly gone, and that we can continue to experience their love and support even after they've left their physical bodies.
It does. It offers a comforting perspective on death and the continuity of consciousness.
Dennis seems to be suggesting that reality is far more mysterious and interconnected than we often imagine.
He is. And he's inviting us to explore these mysteries with an open mind and a willingness to challenge our assumptions about the world and ourselves.
This has been an incredible deep dive so far. We've explored Dennis's arguments for the soul's existence, the concept of karma, the evidence for reincarnation, and the interconnectedness of all things.
It's a lot to process, isn't it?
It is, and we still have so much more to uncover. Dennis's work is incredibly rich and nuanced.
It is, and we're just scratching the surface.
I'm particularly intrigued by his concept of the higher life, the ultimate goal of the soul's journey.
Ah, yes, the summit of the mountain. Dennis describes it as a state of spiritual perfection, where the soul is liberated from the cycle of rebirth and united with the divine.
It sounds like a blissful state of being.
He describes it as a realm of pure love, wisdom, and bliss. It's a state of existence that transcends the limitations and suffering of our earthly experience.
But he doesn't see it as a passive state of idleness, does he?
Not at all. He envisioned these evolved souls as active participants in the divine work, as guides and teachers working to uplift and inspire those who are still on the journey.
So it's not about escaping the world, but about continuing to evolve and contribute to the greater good.
Exactly. Dennis believed that the higher life is not just something we attain after death. It's something we can begin to experience here and now.
That's an empowering thought. We don't have to wait for some future reward. We can start cultivating those qualities of love, wisdom, and compassion in our lives today.
He saw those qualities as the building blocks of the higher life, the seeds of our spiritual evolution.
So how do we cultivate those qualities? What specific practices did Dennis recommend?
Well, he talked about the importance of meditation, contemplation, and service to others. He believed that these practices could help us to quiet the mind, connect with our inner selves, and cultivate a more expansive and compassionate worldview.
It sounds like he's advocating for a more mindful and intentional way of living.
He is.
Yeah.
And he believed that this mindful way of living is not just beneficial for individuals, but for society as a whole. He saw the potential for spiritualism to transform not just our personal lives, but also the world around us.
He was quite the visionary, wasn't he?
He was. And his work continues to inspire and challenge us to think differently about life, death, and the nature of reality.
This deep dive has been an incredible journey so far, and we're not done yet. I can't wait to explore Dennis's thoughts on death and what lies beyond.
Ah, yes, the great mystery. Dennis offers a very different perspective than the traditional views of heaven and hell.
I'm all ears. Tell me more.
So Dennis doesn't see death as like an ending, but as a transition to a new phase of existence. He describes this process where the soul kind of gradually detaches from the physical body and enters what he calls the spirit world.
So it's not like flipping a switch, it's more of a gradual process of disentanglement.
Exactly. And he really emphasizes that consciousness continues. We retain our memories,
Yeah.
our personality, and our capacity for growth and evolution. It's not like we suddenly become angels or demons. We're still ourselves, just without the limitations of the physical body.
That makes sense. It would be kind of strange to suddenly lose all sense of who you are just because you shed your physical form. So what kind of experiences do we have in the spirit world, according to Dennis?
He suggests that our experiences in the spirit world are largely determined by our spiritual development during our time on Earth. You know, if we've spent our lives cultivating love, compassion, and wisdom, we're likely to experience a more harmonious and joyful existence in the spirit world.
So it's not about being judged or sent to a specific place. We create our own heaven or hell based on the choices we make and the qualities we cultivate in this life.
That's how Dennis saw it. He described the spirit world as a place of immense beauty, peace, and harmony. But he also emphasized that it's not a static state. It's a realm where learning and growth continue.
It's interesting that even in this realm of supposed perfection, there's still room for evolution. So does Dennis believe we can communicate with loved ones who have passed on?
He does. He believed that communication is possible through mediums and other forms of spiritual contact. He saw these communications as a way to provide evidence of the soul's survival and to offer comfort and guidance to those who are grieving.
I imagine those communications would be a great source of comfort for those left behind. You know, it challenges the fear and finality that often surround death.
It does. It offers a glimpse into a reality where death is not an end, but a doorway to a new beginning. And this doorway, according to Dennis, leads to a journey of continued spiritual evolution.
So we're not just evolving in this life, but in the spirit world as well.
That's right. He saw spiritual evolution as an ongoing process, extending beyond the confines of our earthly existence. It's a journey of moving towards greater wisdom, compassion, and connection to the divine.
And you mentioned before that he even suggests that we choose our future lives based on the lessons we need to learn.
He does. He believes that we participate in shaping our destiny, even across lifetimes. We choose the experiences that will best serve our spiritual evolution.
I'm trying to wrap my head around that. So it's not just random chance that determines our next life. We're making conscious choices even if we don't remember them.
That's the idea. It's certainly a concept that challenges our typical notions of time and linear progression.
It certainly does. It's one of the most mind-boggling ideas I've ever heard. So if we're all on this journey of spiritual evolution, how does Dennis explain the vast inequalities we see in the world? Why are some born with advantages while others face incredible hardship?
Dennis saw these disparities as reflections of the different stages of soul development. Remember the idea that we're all on a journey, but we're not all starting from the same point. Some souls have been traveling longer, some have already learned certain lessons, while others are still working through them.
So someone who is born into poverty may simply be a younger soul, still learning lessons about compassion and resilience.
That's one way to look at it. Dennis also believed that souls choose their lives based on the lessons they need to learn. So someone born into difficult circumstances may have chosen that life to develop certain qualities, or to work through specific karmic patterns.
It's a fascinating way to reframe our understanding of suffering and hardship. It's not just random bad luck, it's a purposeful part of our soul's journey. This actually reminds me of infant prodigies, the children who show amazing talents at a very young age. Dennis attributed that to past lives as well, right?
He did. He believed that their incredible abilities reflect a continuation of learning and mastery from previous lives.
It's like they're picking up right where they left off, carrying that wisdom and expertise into their new life. But if that's the case, does that mean our less desirable traits also carry over from past lives?
Dennis acknowledged that possibility. He suggested that even negative traits, like cruelty or dishonesty, could be traced back to past life influences. But he also believed that we have the power to transform these traits, to learn from our past mistakes and make different choices in this life.
So it's not about blaming past lives for our current struggles, but about understanding how those experiences might be shaping our current challenges.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all works in progress, continually evolving and striving towards greater wisdom and compassion.
This idea of interconnectedness across lifetimes is incredibly profound. It suggests that we're all part of a larger tapestry, woven together by threads of shared experience and spiritual evolution.
That's beautifully put. Denis referred to this interconnectedness as universal communion,
Yeah.
and he believed we can experience it through phenomena like telepathy, premonitions, and even apparitions.
So it's not just a philosophical concept. He believed it's something we can actually experience and verify.
He did. He believed that these experiences offer glimpses into the true nature of reality, a reality that is far more mysterious and interconnected than we often realize.
Denis's ideas are truly transformative. They challenge us to rethink our understanding of life, death, and everything in between. His concept of the soul's journey is incredibly vast and inspiring. But it's also a bit overwhelming. Where do we even begin to apply these concepts to our own lives?
Well, Denis offers some practical guidance. He emphasizes the importance of cultivating virtues like love, compassion, and selflessness. He believed that by aligning our lives with these principles, we not only contribute to our own spiritual growth, but also create a more harmonious and compassionate world.
So it's about embodying these qualities in our daily interactions, making choices that reflect those values. It's about choosing love over fear, kindness over judgment, and forgiveness over resentment.
That's the essence of it. Denis also recommended practices like meditation, contemplation, and service to others as ways to cultivate these qualities and connect with our deeper selves.
These practices offer a way to connect with that universal communion he talked about, to tap into that interconnectedness and experience it firsthand.
They do. And they remind us that we're not alone on this journey. We're all interconnected, supporting each other's evolution and striving towards greater wisdom and compassion.
Wow, this has been an incredible deep dive. Leon Denis's ideas have given me a lot to ponder. I'm starting to see the world and my place in it in a whole new light.
It's truly remarkable how his work, written over a century ago, continues to resonate and offer insights into the human condition.
His work provides a powerful antidote to the materialism and cynicism that often dominate our modern world. It reminds us of the beauty, the mystery, and the infinite possibilities that lie beyond the realm of the purely physical.
It's a call to awaken to our true nature, to embrace the adventure of soul evolution, and contribute to the creation of a more just, harmonious, and spiritually awakened world.
Well, that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive, but I have a feeling this conversation is just beginning.
Indeed. These are questions that humanity has been grappling with for centuries, and Denis's work offers a framework for continuing that exploration.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it sparked some new insights and inspired you to continue your own journey of spiritual exploration.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep evolving.
And remember, the journey is the destination.